There was a moment in the early 1990s when it seemed like the future might be clear. Literally. That's when Crystal Pepsi entered the scene, shimmering under fluorescent store lights like some fizzy, futuristic vision. An audacious, carbonated glimpse into a world where soda could be clean, clear, and pure. It looked more like sparkling spring water or a fancy mineral beverage than anything resembling a cola. But there it was, proudly identifying itself as part of the cola family. It didn't just bend expectations, it shattered them. This wasn't a tweak or a remix of a classic formula. This was a full-on reimagining, a transparent rebellion against the dark, syrupy legacy of every cola that had come before. Crystal Pepsi didn't simply break the mold, it completely dissolved it, vanishing into the fizz with the soft hiss of 1,000 marketing fantasies being uncorked at once. The concept behind Crystal Pepsi was nothing short of daring, especially for a company as massive and brand-conscious as PepsiCo. The plan was simple in theory, but radical in execution. Take everything people loved about cola, its flavor, its refreshment factor, its cultural cachet, and strip it of all the things that made it look and feel heavy. Out went the caramel coloring, out went the caffeine, out went the deep brown hue, and the sticky sweetness that clung to your throat. What remained was something that looked lighter, cleaner, and more futuristic, yet still claimed to taste like a cola. At the time, Pepsi's leadership team was in a highly experimental mindset, ready to gamble big on consumer curiosity. They were chasing what was then known as the clear craze, a marketing trend that had taken hold of the early 90s with surprising intensity. The era was obsessed with transparency, literally and metaphorically. Consumers were drawn to products that promised purity, health, and modern design, and many companies were capitalizing on that obsession by launching see-through versions of their best-selling items. The marketplace was already filling up with translucent variations of everyday goods. Clearly Canadian, a line of sparkling flavored water from British Columbia, had become a symbol of clean living cool. Ivory Soap, long known for its simple, honest branding, leaned hard into clarity as part of its image. In that cultural context, Crystal Pepsi didn't seem entirely out of left field. It felt like a logical next step. If clear water could be trendy, why not clear soda? If consumers were craving products that felt new, honest, and stripped of excess, a transparent cola might just hit the sweet spot between novelty and nostalgia. So Pepsi asked, if the market was ready to embrace a clean break from tradition, why shouldn't they be the ones to offer it? Why not take the biggest, boldest swing possible and give America a soda that looked like the future in a bottle? That's when Crystal Pepsi arrived, shimmering under fluorescent grocery store lights like a carbonated glimpse into some imagined, cleaner, purer soda utopia. It stood out instantly, an oddball on the shelf, a contradiction in a bottle. The drink looked like sparkling water, clear as a mountain spring. But it boldly claimed to be cola. No dark caramel coloring, no familiar brown hue, just pure translucence in a world used to syrupy depths. It didn't just break the mold of what cola was supposed to be. It dissolved that mold entirely, letting it fizz away in the bubbles of 1,000 ambitious marketing dreams. After running through more than 1,000 different product concepts and experimenting with over 3,000 formulations, Pepsi's research teams finally arrived at something they believed could redefine cola. The result was a beverage that stripped away everything people subconsciously expected from a soda. No caramel coloring, no heavy syrup aftertaste, and fewer calories. It was a lighter, cleaner, more pure take on Pepsi, designed to look modern, healthy, and futuristic. The caramel color, long associated with the deep, comforting look of a traditional cola, was replaced by modified food starch, which gave the drink just enough body to mimic the familiar feel of regular Pepsi while keeping the liquid crystal clear. It was, in many ways, an optical illusion in a bottle. All the fizz and flavor cues of a cola, without the dark hue that defined the category. It looked like sparkling water, yet claimed to deliver the same kick as one of America's most famous soft drinks. The company wanted it to symbolize clarity, transparency, and progress. Purity in a bottle, but with bubbles and attitude. When Crystal Pepsi began its test run in 1992, the response was explosive. Pepsi's market researchers had predicted curiosity, but they hadn't anticipated the sheer frenzy that greeted the product. In places like Dallas, Providence, and Salt Lake City, people lined up to get a taste of this mysterious clear cola. It looked like something out of science fiction, and in a decade obsessed with sleek minimalism and new age health trends, that image hit all the right buttons. For a brief, brilliant moment, Crystal Pepsi was everywhere, on store shelves, in vending machines, and on every news segment trying to make sense of the transparent beverage. The numbers were staggering. It captured a full percentage point of the U.S. soft drink market, worth roughly $474 million in its first year. For a brand new soda with no real precedent, that was practically unheard of. It seemed that PepsiCo had pulled off the impossible, launching a completely new category of cola that looked nothing like cola at all. Yet even amid the hype, there was a sense of confusion. Consumers loved the novelty, but couldn't quite decide whether it tasted good or even familiar. It was as if their taste buds and their eyes were fighting each other in real time. To make sure the entire country noticed, Pepsi rolled out one of its most aggressive marketing blitzes ever. The campaign was massive, confident, and unapologetically 90s in style. Van Halen's anthem, Right Now, blared across televisions, its urgent tone matching the promise of a soda designed for the modern age. The commercials were sleek montages of glass bottles, neon lights, and optimistic slogans, painting Crystal Pepsi as the beverage of the future, something clean, progressive, and alive with possibility. They didn't go so far as to paint Concord blue like they did later in the decade, but it sure wasn't a half-hearted effort. Pepsi spent roughly $40 million spreading the gospel of clarity, plastering highways and bus stops with images of glistening clear bottles and slogans that dared consumers to rethink what cola could be. Free samples arrived tucked into Sunday newspapers, like little invitations to join a new age of refreshment. In some cities, Pepsi even covered buses and buildings with the first photorealistic computer-generated wraps, shimmering like glass in the sunlight. The message was everywhere. This was not just another soda, it was a movement. But despite all the money spent, Pepsi had missed one crucial factor, something that no amount of marketing or customer clinics could overcome: human psychology. The taste, while loosely aligned with the familiar flavor profile of traditional Pepsi, didn't quite land the way consumers expected or wanted. On paper, it was close enough to pass as a cola. In reality, it fell into an uncanny valley of soda, too familiar to feel new, but too off-kilter to be comforting. The visual threw people off before the first sip even hit their tongue. Seeing a completely clear soda, housed in a bottle that looked like it should contain lemon-lime freshness, set the brain up for citrus. Most people expected something akin to Sprite, 7-Up, or maybe even Clearly Canadian. What they got instead was a strange, halfway version of cola, like Pepsi had walked through a car wash and come out without its signature color, caffeine, or bite. It was sort of Pepsi, sort of not, and that not was enough to spark confusion. Taste is deeply tied to expectation, and Crystal Pepsi broke the rules without rewriting them in a satisfying way. Truth be told, Crystal Pepsi did become a semi-regular refreshment of mine, a novelty I'd treat myself to every once in a while, but never something I'd pick up on a routine basis in favor of more traditional beverages. I first had it when I saw it on sale at a bowling alley, not far from my house, and out of sheer curiosity, I gave it a try. The taste was okay. It wasn't as strong as regular Pepsi, but the recognizable hints and tones were still there, just in a less significant way. A lot of people say they hated the taste of Crystal Pepsi, with some of my friends telling me that it tasted clinical, like they were drinking the liquid detergent you'd find on hospital floors. But I think a lot of it comes down to the strange moment when this clear liquid like sparkling water first touches your lips, and suddenly you find it doesn't taste like sparkling water at all, but something distinctly heavier. Food psychology plays a bigger role here than it might seem. For decades, consumers had been trained, conditioned even, to associate certain colors with certain flavors. Brown meant cola, meant caramelized sugar, meant caffeine and syrupy bite. Clear meant citrus, lightness, and fizz, without the heft. When people saw Crystal Pepsi, their brains preloaded for lemon-lime zest, or perhaps even tonic water. Instead, they were met with an oddly smooth, caramelous, caffeine-free imitation of cola that didn't match the visual. That mismatch wasn't just disappointing, it was disorienting. Many people described the experience as unsettling, like drinking something you thought was water, only to find it tastes like root beer. It's not just taste, it's expectation whiplash. But if the cognitive dissonance wasn't enough to sink it, sabotage gave it a final push. Coca-Cola, never one to watch Pepsi experiment without answering back, launched its own clear soda, Tab Clear. But this wasn't a real competitor. It wasn't meant to thrive. It was, in effect, a decoy, a Trojan horse designed to pollute the idea of clear colas altogether. Tab Clear was a diet drink, vaguely marketed and lacking in identity, deliberately so. Coke's strategy was to blur the lines between Crystal Pepsi and Tab Clear, just enough that consumers lumped them together in one big no thanks category. The plan worked. Tab Clear collapsed quickly, and it took Crystal Pepsi down with it. People got tired of trying to figure out what clear cola was supposed to be. The novelty wore off, trust eroded. What started as an innovative push toward the future of soda turned into a cautionary tale about branding, psychology, and corporate chess moves. Call it brand confusion, call it strategic cross-contamination, or just call it what it was: soda sabotage in its purest, most transparent form. Pepsi, in an attempt to salvage its ambitious but faltering experiment, decided to rework the formula in 1994. The result was a citrus-infused variation known as Crystal from Pepsi, a move that seemed to acknowledge the public's lingering confusion over the original taste. This version leaned into the expectation that a clear soda should be more lemon-lime, more Sprite-adjacent, something fresher and crisper. But the timing was off. By that point, the clear beverage trend that had briefly taken over shelves, from soaps to sports drinks, was already losing steam. Consumers had moved on, distracted by the next shiny fad. The once bold dream of a transparent cola revolution was fading fast, dulled by both market saturation and the creeping realization that maybe clear cola was more gimmick than game changer. Yet products that fail in the market sometimes succeed in memory. Nostalgia has a strange gravitational pull, especially in the digital age where nothing stays buried for long. Years after Crystal Pepsi had vanished from store shelves, it began bubbling back into public consciousness. Not through official channels, but through the unruly energy of online culture. Social media platforms became unlikely altars to forgotten snacks and sodas, and Crystal Pepsi quickly earned a spot among the most mythologized. A grassroots campaign gained traction, largely driven by internet diehards and fueled by a mix of irony, earnest longing, and pure spectacle. One of the key figures in this revival was Kevin L.A. Beast Strala, a YouTuber known for pushing his body to absurd limits. In one unforgettable video, he chugged a decades-old bottle of Crystal Pepsi, yellowed, flat, and very likely toxic, and promptly threw it back up, spectacularly and on camera. The clip went viral almost instantly. Disgusted fascination met digital nostalgia, and suddenly Crystal Pepsi was back in the conversation. That groundswell of weird affection was loud enough to reach corporate ears. In 2016, Pepsi responded. For the first time in over 2 decades, Crystal Pepsi returned to shelves, this time as a limited-time product framed by its own retro weirdness. The packaging was familiar, but now deliberately vintage, leaning hard into early 90s design cues like it was cosplaying itself. It didn't need to prove anything anymore. This wasn't about revolution, or health claims, or market disruption. It was about memory. It came back again in 2017, and both releases sold briskly. Consumers lined up not necessarily for the flavor, which remained as polarizing as ever, but for the feeling. They wanted to recapture something, even if they weren't entirely sure what it was. For some, it was the taste of childhood. For others, it was a curiosity they had only heard about in whispers or online lists of discontinued oddities. It was, as more than one fan put it, liquid history. And honestly, that label fits. Crystal Pepsi wasn't just another failed product. It became something more enduring, a cultural touchstone wrapped in misplaced ambition and fond confusion. It stood for a moment in time when corporations believed consumers would buy anything if it looked new enough, pure enough, futuristic enough. It also became a cautionary tale of how visual novelty doesn't always match consumer expectations, and how those mismatches can leave lasting impressions. Its story is strange and oddly poetic. A drink that was supposed to be revolutionary instead became a punchline, then a relic, and finally a meme-worthy resurrection. It never quite lived up to its original promise, but in a way, that's what makes it so unforgettable. Crystal Pepsi's legacy isn't about taste or success. It's about the audacity to try something weird, to bet big on an idea that didn't quite click, and then to watch as that failure turned into folklore. Was it good? That's still up for debate. Some called it refreshing. Others found it confusing or just plain wrong. Was it necessary? Almost certainly not. But was it memorable? Without a doubt. In the long, crowded timeline of consumer products, Crystal Pepsi didn't just leave a mark. It left a translucent ghost that still lingers in the fridge of American pop culture.
Come along, let's sing, where the joy will bring. Tune into the beat, feel the magic, it's true. Channel snacks, we're here just for you, for you.